Animation. It's pretty cool. I personally lack in the holy land of such a field, and honestly, I will usually get mad at the stuff that I draw to begin with. However, those who can conjure up something of such great motion, all in sequence, are just gifted with something else entirely. It's not just them though. Those who go in and make the absolute fantastic soundtracks, those who go into the studio and do the voice acting for the series, all of them do an absolute phenomenal job. I think it's fair to say there's always room to critique something, whether it's good or bad. It's always important to point out something in whatever you find to be entertainment. It's a whole lot better than just failing to show your work and then just writing mid on a series anyways. When we enter anime though, we enter a weird kind of field. Obviously, getting an anime for a series is a big deal. There's a decent amount of series out there that go without an adaptation, and going through my Shonen Jump challenge, where I go through the series in the magazine to see if the reputation that it has is correct or not, has pretty much shown me how little there actually is. With that said, there's also series out there that just get animated to begin with. There's nothing to adapt from. It's just written the way it is from the very beginning. My personal favorite examples I can think of is Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, which both were made from the ground up and just kind of animated from there. It is cool, however, to see a proper adaptation for a series that you love. I remember reading Chainsaw Man and Spy Family, albeit I delayed reading Spy Family for so long that eventually the first episode launched, then I watched the first episode, and then I started reading it. But both series I had read and was super excited to see everything in motion once that time came. But I think that's the biggest excitement of this whole thing. Reading through a series, loving it to death, and then hearing that great announcement of the whole thing is getting this adaptation with fantastic voice acting and this beautiful score to it, just everything being perfect. Now, does it always work out? I mean, if we're being honest, no. Look, there's some adaptations out there that are absurd in terms of quality, and I will definitely speak of a few. But there's also a decent amount that kind of get screwed over in some regard, and as a result, the adaptation is sometimes okay, or just a worse option for the series. So what are we going to do today? Well, that's easy to explain. Welcome to yet another video of Niab talks about the things that he enjoys, and he promises that he does not hate these things. He just likes to point out the things that could be better or that are already good to begin with. Trademark pending. We've got a lot of shit to talk about and a lot of series to go through. So let's just dive in, shall we?
The winner should not speak of how the world is, but how it should be.
I fucking love Bleach. I still remember trying to watch the series when I was young and getting like 30 minutes into the first episode before getting bored entirely and just shutting the whole thing off. If I could, I would beat the shit out of little me for doing that, and then I'd also proceed to tell him to read that series he did see with the girl with long purple hair, because that would also be worth it. Anyways, I've watched Bleach as of pretty much a little bit over a year ago, and it was a fantastic journey for me all the way through. I love that shit to bits. But would I say the anime was absolutely perfect in terms of an adaptation? No. Bleach's anime suffers from 3 problems that I can list that stand as the biggest of the problems. 1. There's a shit ton of filler. It makes sense on why it's there, since filler serves the purpose for the manga to get ahead, but there's a lot. To give you an exact amount, there's roughly about 100 episodes of filler in there. In comparison, there's roughly about 300 episodes in total. 2. Pacing. The pacing of the series can sometimes really drag shit out and make events in the story last way longer than they should. Fights can last multiple episodes because of this, and as a result, it can lead things to feel like a complete slog. And 3, which is the least bad area, but it does take away from part of the charm of Bleach, in a way. The blood and gore. The Bleach manga is pretty damn brutal a lot of the time, and oftentimes it can give you a nice view of what an absolute bloodbath looks like, or the hidden meat inside of somebody's body. The anime, however, kinda removes a sense of this, and instead just puts a red background on the scene, as well as shading the characters in black. It does give the implication that some big damage has occurred, but it doesn't really show it to you in the proper fashion. One example I can think of is a character in the manga gets a good chunk of their waist kind of just ripped off, whereas in the anime, they do the whole red frame shaded characters thing that I mentioned, and then when we see the character again, their clothes are ripped and there's light scratches on their body. When they're trying to show raw power with a character, that kind of just removes the sense of belief. Alright, Bleach has a fine adaptation. It's not great, but it's not just okay. It's enough for the series to be digestible in its general anime format. But what if there was a way to get around this? What if there was something in Bleach's adaptation that we could use to actually improve on things? Let's change the clock here. We're jumping all the way to 2022. Bleach has, and currently is still, getting its final arc adapted. The immediate fear that rises with this announcement is that we'll just be going through the same shit that occurred last time with the anime. Right? Instead, not only is the pacing and all these other issues fixed because Kubo's on board with this adaptation, but also this adaptation is the better way to experience the arc. Let me add a little bit more context here, since the pacing part would make sense given the fact that the series has been done for a while now. That second bit about this being the better option, that might sound a little odd here. When the Thousand Year Blood War arc of Bleach dropped in the manga, Kubo was unfortunately undergoing some health issues at the time. Unfortunately, as a result, a lot of the general big story points near the end kinda got rushed a whole lot just so that the series could reach its conclusion. Now, I personally still love the arc, but the pacing problems in terms of how fast it was going was very noticeable, and problems did still occasionally occur. In order to fix this problem, however, Kubo is now assisting with the anime adaptation and making sure things go along the correct track instead of what was done with the manga. This of course leads to a lot more clarity on big plot points, as well as the things in the plot moving at a not too quick but not too slow speed to it all. It makes this perfect balance to the arc while fixing the problems that it may have originally had. I am personally loving the Thousand Year Blood War adaptation, and if we had to rank these adaptations, this is easily the best one by far. It's not only going at the perfect pace and adapting everything nicely, but it's giving extra info on the shit that is going on. Bleach might have had a bit of a rough adaptation at first, but this has easily fixed all of the errors that original adaptation had.
I am not a devil! I am Devilman!
If we're going to talk about adaptations and the like, I think this should be a pretty good example. Devilman. I love this series, but I love this series in a kind of odd way. The original manga is great, and for something of its time, it definitely feels like a revolutionary series. With that said, I find the original manga to be great, but that's it. I don't mean to say that in a negative light, but it's just that the manga does a lot of really diverse things without necessarily doing anything extreme in terms of the writing, in my opinion. Now, if we want to talk about adaptations, I could mention the unfinished OVAs, which isn't really that far off from the manga itself. However, if we're going to talk about these adaptations, I think there's a different one that we should focus on. One that a lot of people should be familiar with, and I myself absolutely love. Devilman Crybaby. When people hear Devilman, at least over here in the West for the most part, this is usually what they think of. It makes sense given a lot of people have talked about it, along with the fact that the series won both Best Director and Anime of the Year. For those who have seen both versions this anime along with the manga, you might have your own opinion on this that is completely different from the person beside you. I can't speak for everybody here, so as odd as it may seem, I kinda just have to force my opinion into this section. But hey, the comments are always a great place to share how you feel about this sort of stuff with each other anyways. My first viewing of both Crybaby and the original manga was very interesting. Because I had read the manga after I had seen the anime, I had pretty much ended up in such a space where I enjoyed the manga more. But then I got a bit older, a bit smarter, and when it came to reading or watching a series, I tended to focus more on the plot and writing of characters and all sorts of stuff like that over more simple things. I then rewatched Crybaby, and my opinion was completely different. To move away from my opinion here for a moment, let's talk about the adaptation itself. Crybaby takes the original manga of Devilman and changes things up a little bit. The general plot points are still the same, or rather, the major events that still occur still happen, but there's differences in there to diversify things in a fun way to pretty much give a fresh take on the series. Now, I absolutely love this choice to death, and it is the main reason why Devilman is in my top 10 to begin with. First off, it manages to modernize the series without making things confusing due to previous editions or just kind of ruining things altogether. The original Devilman manga is old. Like, real damn old. It was released in the early 70s, and as a result, there's a lot of stuff in there that isn't exactly up to date, if you know what I mean. Crybaby takes these things, however, and pushes them into modern day. Now, these changes are nice, but there's a much bigger one that is genuinely so fantastic, and it's why Crybaby adapts this series so damn well. Characters. I love the original Devilman a lot, and there's a lot of great stuff to say about it. But one area it severely lacks in is the depth of their characters. Akira and Ryo are the only characters in the manga who kind of just build more and more as it goes on, and everybody else there kind of just feels like they're there for the sake of being there. Crybaby took these characters, however, along with the lesser important characters, along with entirely new characters, and molded them into something fascinating. Each of them get their own time in the spotlight, and as a result, you're able to build a proper connection with these characters, which is really important for this series in particular. Even Miko gets to be a main character in this version. She was just a character who had 2 or 3 scenes in the original manga, and now she is part of the main cast and is a fantastic addition. Crybaby is a adaptation that might depend on the perspective of the person viewing it. But for me personally, this is another high-tier adaptation where it feels like they took the original series and went even further beyond with it in terms of what they wanted to do originally.
Life is epic!
I'm gonna be honest, this section is mainly just me wanting to talk about a manga that I absolutely love and is one of my favorite series, and how its adaptation kind of got screwed over. So this is a little bit shorter, but I mean, I still want to talk about it anyways. Medaka Box is a really damn great Shonen Jump series that was adapted into an anime by Gainax in 2012. Now, given Medaka Box's style, this sounds like the literal perfect studio to take on an adaptation for the series. The series is very bombastic, goofy, cool. It hits all the same notes that you would expect from a Gainax series. So hey, handing it off to them to handle an adaptation for it sounds like the perfect idea, right? One issue. One very slight issue. See, Gainax had a bit of a separation after some talking. They still have a general good speaking relationship with their now divorced member, and they still get to see the kids every so often, both parties, which is nice. So that means Gurren and Panty and Stocking get to be happy. But the new generation doesn't exactly get to have what the others might. Remember how I said Medaka Box would be perfect for Gainax's style? Well, I specifically meant the old Gainax, and what is now Studio Trigger. The studio, by the way, that split from Gainax in 2011. Medaka Box was adapted into an anime in 2012. Gainax had a bit of a struggle after Trigger left, and at this point in time, it is basically just a folder for other studios to take from if they want to use something in there. On top of that, the adaptation is decent. Not great, but it's decent. While chapters can be occasionally big with Medaka Box, they aren't always big enough to last a whole episode. And on occasion, that happened. Medaka Box's anime lasted about 2 seasons with a grand total of 24 episodes. It's really unfortunate that it ended where it did, because that was the start of the 3rd arc of the series. The exact arc, to be specific, that kinda hits the ground and skyrockets up, since the first 2 arcs before that are just the usual Shonen Jump introduction arcs. You know the ones, where they usually introduce you with enough information so you understand what's going on, but don't bombard you with too much information as to just bewilder you. That type of stuff. The 3rd arc and everything past that in Medaka Box is genuinely really damn fantastic, and it's really super saddening that the anime didn't even get past that point. I genuinely pray, for whatever reason, Trigger kind of just sees that sad puppy of a series just sitting there and just takes it up on their own. I know it's been 10 years since this whole thing has even been adapted, and there's not enough interest booming in it for it to even garner an adaptation, but Trigger is the perfect studio for this series. If you don't mind going through a manga just from the get-go for a series rather than watching a little bit of the anime, and you absolutely love Kill la Kill, read Medaka Box. I'm not even trying to give that as some sort of command or anything, but it is genuinely so damn good, and it hits so many of the same notes as Kill la Kill, despite the fact that it was 4 years prior. Hell, Medaka Box ended a few months before Kill la Kill even came out to begin with. But if you love something like Kill la Kill, I just highly recommend it. It's a really damn good series. You can obviously use the anime to dip your toes in the water with it, but just note, if you decide to use that you're taking what is essentially 3 or 4 hours worth of reading, maybe less honestly, and you're expanding that to roughly about 8 hours of watching. Overall, Medaka Box is a excellent manga, but its adaptation was kind of just decent.
Date Asamo! Yeah!
Alright, we've done this song and dance enough with this series, so let's just keep this brief. ReZero is a fantastic web novel and light novel series that I hold so high on my top 10 list that it's in my number 2 spot. You can also tell how much I've enjoyed it due to how many videos there are on the channel about it. I've had my fair share of complaints about it before, but it's always fair to critique something that you love. Out of all the critiques I've given it, though, there's one that stands out and is much stronger than the others, and I've spoken about a whole lot. The anime. I love the anime for the absolute fantastic work it does on a bunch of fronts, like the voice acting, the beautiful score, some of the animation just looking absolutely beautiful, all that sort of stuff. I have a problem with it, however. It's not just one, but there's one that mainly stands out that's the thing we're going to focus on here. When adapting a story, it's very important that certain things in that story are kept in when moving it to a different format. Adapting a novel can be tricky, and obviously, stuff like context dialogue doesn't really need to be in there. That's not the problem here, though. While the anime does a good job at getting people interested in the series, which I think some people who critique the anime tend to forget that point, there is something it does that is quite annoying. And that's the removal of very crucial plot points regarding the future. I can't outright mention anything without giving spoilers, so instead, I'm going to make a slight, vague example here. In the novels, an entire royal bloodline had mysteriously become sick, and as a result, they could not command the country they had rule over. Thus, a new royal selection was started for who would be the next person to lead the whole country. One of the surprise reveals, however, is one of the participants of the selection just so happens to be very similar to the royal bloodline that went sick, with a lot of other characters noting their general appearance details as well as other things. So, with that said, let's take that whole thing and cut out that second part there, meaning there's no explanation for the surprise of one of the participants, no notices of the appearance or anything like that, nothing. We just have the same general plot point of the royal selection without the interesting twist that's thrown in there. This example is only one of many, as a lot of important plot points end up having this issue. They get cut out entirely, and as a result, the plot just gets more confusing from there. This issue becomes especially bad with the fourth arc of the series, or as some may know it, Season 2, where so much shit is taken out that it becomes especially confusing and certain plot moments just don't make sense at all. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is a ReZero issue, but at least it's not an issue with the studio as a whole. And you know what? That's true. That's very true. You make a good point there. You make a really good point there. I mean, surely this wouldn't happen with another series that the studio, White Fox, decided to adapt. I don't think it would happen like that. I mean, there's no way it could happen twice, right? Akame ga Kill is a series that, for me personally, I feel decent about, and while I may not be huge on it in terms of many other opinions that others have about it, I will say the manga is far better. This is mainly due to the issue that, once again, this is a series adapted by White Fox, and something interesting they decided to do was cut out an entire arc from the manga for no good You see where I'm going with this, right? Look, I don't think White Fox is some sort of devil type of studio that a lot of people can make it out to be. They can do some real good sometimes in terms of this sort of stuff. However, it's been twice now where I've seen them take a series, adapt it, and remove some of the necessary meat that's slapped onto it rather than the fat on the sides. It's to a point where if I have to recommend ReZero to somebody, I would recommend it via the novel or manga, which is really unfortunate because the novel probably doesn't sound all that enticing, and the manga isn't even caught up to where the anime finished. The anime is a good way to start the series, but it is by no means a good adaptation. We're now currently waiting for the third season, which has been announced, which will be covering the fifth and possibly the sixth arc. While I should be excited for this, and I technically am for a variety of reasons, I'm also really afraid for what this might mean for both arcs in terms of adaptation. As bad as it sounds, and as much as I love ReZero, if I had to rank this adaptation, it would unfortunately be right in the middle and kind of edging down to a lower position.
Ugh. Look at all these yummy cigars for me to light and put in my mouth. Ugh.
Yeah, there's a reason I didn't put ReZero any lower. In my top 10 manga and animes list, the only thing that stands right above ReZero is Fist of the North Star, a fantastic martial arts based series that talks about similar general topics to ReZero, like love and stars. Of course, however, because this is an action manga, it has its own unique spin to things. It was also made 30 years prior to ReZero, but that's besides the point. It's a fantastic manga, and the anime adaptation, while having a few problems of its own, is still a fantastic coverage of that story. Many years later, much after the anime concluded, the series received a prequel in the form of Fist of the Blue Sky, which, once again, was a fantastic manga similar to that of its predecessor. Luckily, as to be expected, this series also received an anime adaptation of its own. It was alright. The original adaptation of Fist of the Blue Sky is odd, because the animation isn't anything to speak about. The sound effects and just general music of it are very basic. It's really not all that memorable. The easiest way to word it, really, is it adapts the first half of the story, and that's it. But we're lucky, though, because that other bit of the story, we still got an adaptation of it, all thanks to It Sucks. It's bad. Well, like, really damn bad. Fist of the Blue Sky Regenesis attempts to continue the plot, but much like ReZero, it decides to cut out a whole lot of things. But honestly, it puts ReZero to shame, because remember when I was talking about ReZero and I mentioned how they cut out a lot of crucial plot points? Well, imagine they did that, right? But instead of focusing on crucial plot points to cut out, they cut out one of the main antagonists. He's gone. They then sped up the process for how one of the other main antagonists shows up. They removed a few characters here and there. They sped up it again, and then they had to make up their own original plot because they realized they rushed too quickly to where the manga had ended. There's something to be said about a series that's trying to have its own original plot from something that already exists. But it's a different deal when you're trying to adapt the story that transpired in the manga. The biggest priority of an adaptation is to adapt the source material, and Fist of the Blue Sky Regenesis doesn't really do that at all. Which is why, if I were to rank it on our big list here, it would be at the bottom of the barrel.
I'm talking about this, you big bitch.
Now this is how you continue a series. Baki is another great series that, honestly, as odd as it may sound, had the opposite problem that Fist of the Blue Sky did. The original adaptation of Baki wasn't bad, but it wasn't necessarily anything to write home about. It serves as a decent way to go through the series, but the manga is always there. It's just a better alternative. And then all of a sudden, a crack formed in the earth in 2018. Light emerged from that crack, and from within that light came Baki once again. Only this time, the animation was turned up to a higher level, albeit past Season 1, because Season 1 uses CGI a lot, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, with Baki, it's kind of bad because it just doesn't look good. The voice acting was stellar, and everything was perfect. This, in my opinion, is the perfect comeback for a series. At the current time of writing this, the anime has pretty much finished the main plot line of the story, and whether it continues with the spin-off stuff is currently unknown. Regardless of that, it's absolutely fantastic that a series could return after 10 years of silence just to finish up the plot that they had started. This is an odd thing to rank, since this, of course, much like Blue Sky, includes both things, but I'd have to rank this pretty damn high, seeing as they were willing to go all the way back and finish the once open-ended project that they had started. Now please, some studio out there, or more specifically Trigger, please pick up Madaka.
Oh, she just like me. For real, for real.
I can't actually speak much for Bocchi's manga since I haven't read very much of it, but I personally am not really huge on the whole 4-coma type of concept. I'm by no means calling it bad, I just personally can't dig the flow of it, and as a result, I didn't really read the Bocchi manga past where the anime left off. With that said, I did go back and look at some moments in the manga compared to the anime, just to see it, and yeah, there's a lot to say about Bocchi's adaptation. Bocchi is a series that is just filled with references, and despite the fact that it didn't seem all that popular or there were that many chats going on about it, at least over here in the West anyways, this series got an absurdly good adaptation to it. The animation to it is so fluid, so fantastic, that I was genuinely amazed on my first watch through. It kind of amazes me that this series managed to sneak up on everybody and just blast them with its beautifully colorful flavor. On top of that, I had just mentioned the references that appear in the series, and the anime made sure to take those and bring them to a much higher and even more faithful level. As I said, I'm unfamiliar with the manga, and I haven't read very much of it at all. But I can at least say this. Bocchi received an absolutely fantastic adaptation, and it is so absurd and so damn good with what it takes from the manga and creates in its own vision that this is easily a high tier ranking on our adaptation list. There's a lot of stuff I could talk about in terms of adaptations. I could talk about things like Demon Slayer, where the plot in the manga weren't interesting enough for me to just read as is, so the anime actually did a much better job in terms of forming that into something much more digestible. I could talk about series that have multiple adaptations like Hunter x Hunter, or even multiple adaptations that are slightly different, similar to Devilman, like Trigun. This script is already as large as a web novel chapter. Instead, I want to end this video off with a message that might subvert what you might have thought going into this video. Adaptations are adaptations. Shocker, I know, but there's more to it. There's no guarantee they're going to be perfect. There's no guarantee they're going to be good or bad. There's a big gamble to it all. There's one thing that should be noted though, and it's that adaptations are a gift. It's thanks to these adaptations that we get to see these scenes that we love animated, the voices that are chosen for them, and just seeing this whole story that we love unfold once again. I mentioned the fourth arc of ReZero earlier in this video, and trust me, I have a whole lot of problems with the shit that they took out. Despite my problems, there's still something that I absolutely love to it, and it's the fact that we got to see this story, this arc, unfold in the way we did, and just finally getting to see everything animated. It's just really damn cool to see, even if the adaptation isn't exactly perfect. Plus, if we're being real here, animators don't exactly get the pay that they should. Like, they should be getting a lot more, and I mean, the crunch that they sometimes have to endure only adds more problems to the whole thing. Adaptations are nice, and even if they aren't perfect, and it's totally fair to critique the problems that you have with it, we should always note the effort that's pushed into them, along with the fun of, once again, seeing these stories unfold that we love so much. So for anybody who watched the previous video about the ReZero figures and all that, and then heard me say, yeah, I'm gonna record this video now, I want you to know I'm very tired. But yeah, thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoyed. This was a very fun one. I was very excited for this, right? Other video, I was excited to talk about certain things, but like that was a big critique type of thing. This was a video that I've been planning for a while. I was going to handle this differently, and there's another video I might do as a follow-up type of thing in regards to the ReZero stuff, right? Like the cut content type of stuff, and other animes and this sort of shit. That's something that I was planning on doing, which is why I had that one video on the channel comparing, Core 2 of Bleach with ReZero's new season and all sorts of shit. That's partially why I had that, and this video is also part of that. It's just more so, this video doesn't really connect to that as much as it does the follow-up, which is connected to that previous one. I know that's confusing. That's just generally the floor plan there. But yeah, I hope this video was great for you all. I had a lot of fun making this, which is odd to say a little bit, because, I enjoy making videos, but there are times where I'm like, man, that might not have been the best, or that might have been alright, and there's some things that I critique with my own work, but this is something that already I'm very happy about, right? I'm happy with how I wrote it out, happy with this recording overall, everything. It worked out really damn nicely. And speaking of adaptations, it happened at around the start of me writing this script, and if some people are familiar with Fist of the North Star or have even seen news regarding it, you probably know what I'm going to talk about next. As I started writing this script, not recording, writing this script, and I got around the Bleach section, the announcement of the Fist of the North Star new adaptation, 40th anniversary adaptation, got announced. I am very excited for that. It seems like from the interviews that were mentioned from Buran-san and Tetsuo Hara, this is going to be a proper adaptation of the original manga. It's not going to be some spin-off stuff or anything. It's just going to be a proper adaptation. I'm curious to see how it is, right? There's a chance it's CGI. I wouldn't even mind that, right? When I mentioned my problem with Fist of the Blue Sky, like Regenesis and all that, I didn't even have a problem that it used CGI. In fact, it had frame rate problems sometimes, but I didn't mind the models. I did not mind the models at all. So if this gets a good CGI adaptation, if that's what we're going with, right? Something similar to Trigun, I'm gonna say, right? Something similar to that, beautiful. I will love it. I'm excited for that. I'm so glad that happened right as I was making this video. That's perfect. That is literally perfect. Anyways, I mentioned this with the previous ReZero video stuff, all that sort of like shit. So I'm gonna mention it again here, even though this isn't really a ReZero video. This is like 1/7 for 1/8 of that, right? But anyways, it's just a channel thing, so it should be noted. Next video on the channel, next big one, is the Get Into. The next Get Into. I'm not gonna reveal it just yet, right? We've done some hints. That's about it, right? But the next Get Into is the next big thing on the channel. If you need context towards what that is, it's basically a series where I get you into a series. We have, I want to say about 4 of them so far, because we have Yakuza 7, since I felt like that was a good starting point and everything, ReZero, Fist of the North Star, and Devil May Cry, where I also more so specifically talked about 5, but it's technically just Devil May Cry as a whole. Those 4 are the only ones on the channel right now. We'd have a bit more had I not had some issues here and there, but yeah, that'll be the 5th one coming soon, right? I don't know when, but at the time of this video going up, that whole script is probably already written out, right? I'm focusing on that. That said, with what I mentioned with the previous video, I gotta mention it here again. That whole thing is gonna be written out. That does not mean that, the video is immediately coming out. That also does not mean we're sticking to videos here at the moment, because one of the most important things is our switch. Is like this whole switch from doing these videos and everything to the 10-year project that I've been doing. That is one of the most important things to note about this, right? So that switch is gonna happen. At the time of this video going up, that switch has probably already happened. So, just to note, we're gonna be switching over for a bit. We will get into before the end of the year. It will be in there. We will still have the Rumble at the end of the year, so don't worry about that. Everything will still be good, right? All the videos and stuff like that will still be fine. It's just a matter of we're going to slow down on videos after this point. And then we'll be back. I promise. Alright, cool. With that said, take care, have yourselves a great night, and I'll see you all, possibly with the Get Into, or maybe with whatever comes next. See ya.
Well, squirt!